So welcome to our event. My name is Dan Warren. I'm the Executive Director of the Sphinx Foundation for Archaeological Research, or SFAR, a Chicago-based nonprofit that came about as a response to our ever-changing world and the increasingly limited funding sources and budgetary restrictions faced by academic institutions and museums, existing nonprofit organizations, oops, existing nonprofit organizations, uh, along with rising costs, making SPAR a critical partner to ensure that academic research, fieldwork, and conservation projects to explore and preserve the past continues unimpeded. Our organization is dedicated to uncovering and preserving the rich history of Egypt. We are immensely grateful to our dear colleagues and friends in the Ministry of Tourism and Antiquities, the Supreme Council of Antiquities, and everyone in Egypt who so generously share their legacy and history with the world. We are so very proud of our partners, the academics and institutions carrying out this work in Egypt, the Egyptians working with our missions, our Rais, Omar, SFAR's own coordinator in Egypt, Sayed, and everyone involved in the archaeological process. I also wanted to encourage you to download a copy of our inaugural newsletter, Sphinx and Trowel, which includes an article by today's speaker, along with the projects of our other partnering missions and funded research projects. I would like to remind you that this event and other similar activities that fund archaeological research related to Egypt would not be possible without the generous support of contributors like yourself. If you would like to make a donation or get involved, please contact us at info@sphinxarchaeology.org, also found on our website, or consider making a tax-deductible gift through our online portal. I also encourage you, if you've not already done so, to visit our website and social media platforms. Our speaker today, Dr. Suzanne Onstine, is an associate professor in the Department of History at the University of Memphis. She received a BA in anthropology at the University of Memphis, or excuse me, at the University of Arizona, and her MA and PhD in Near and Middle Eastern civilizations at the University of Toronto, in addition to being a co-PI for the National Science Foundation funded project Methodology for Reconstructing Prior River Flow. She currently directs the University of Memphis mission to Theban Tomb 16, the tomb of Panehsy in el-Naga, Luxor. The University of Memphis mission to TT16 has been documenting and studying the Ramesside-era tomb since 2008. Dr. Onstine has worked as an archaeologist in Egypt for almost 30 years. She has published many works on religion and gender, in addition to various aspects of her work in today's tomb, TT16. I now give it over to Dr. Onstine. And again, thank you so very much for joining us. And thank you, Dr. Onstine, for giving this talk.
Thanks, Dan. I appreciate the introduction. And I just want to start by saying that it really is such a pleasure to have a new funding source on the scene, because archaeology and humanities sorts of research are increasingly under attack by political forces that are defunding the places where we usually go to get funding. And so having a nonprofit on our side is really quite a blessing. So today I want to tell you about the work that we've been doing at TT16. And you'll have to forgive me, I have a cold, so I will occasionally have to either clear my throat or have some water, but hopefully my voice will hold out throughout this thing. So what you see here on this first slide is the landscape of el-Naga in Luxor. And as many of you know, it is an active part of village life. And until about 2007, there were still houses all the way up the hill. You could see the darker areas and some of the houses that have been demolished. And so there are many conservation challenges as a result of having been in this really active village landscape. And so what I'm going to do today is just give you an overview of the tomb and its decoration, as well as some of our conservation that we started last year, so you can get an idea of what's going on here. So Theban Tomb 16 is located in the northern end of el-Naga. As you can see, that sort of difference between the cultivation and the desert land very stark from this balloon photo. TT16 up there, marked with the black letters TT16, is in the northernmost section of this large necropolis of more than 300, probably more than 400 tombs of elite people from mainly the New Kingdom, but also from the Middle Kingdom and the later Third Intermediate period. So just as a reference for what else is in the neighborhood, it is on the road to Deir el-Bahri. It is near all of the mortuary temples, such as the Ramesseum, and near the temple of Seti I at Gurna. It is sort of directly across the river from Karnak Temple. So if you go up the hill from our tomb, you could look just straight out, and on a clear day, you'll be able to see Karnak Temple. So here's the tomb before we started working. In 2007, there was a large campaign throughout Gurna to remove the houses and dramatically change the landscape. And so here you can see the tomb. There's a little enclosure wall around it, but you can see there's still a lot of rubble that sort of covers the tomb entrance. In fact, the first time I saw the tomb, the entrance, the door entrance was just a sliver. There was so much rubble that had sort of slid downhill as a result of the demolition. So it's even worse than what that picture shows. On the right, you can see how it looks now, how it has been cleared away, and above it, you can see there's no more house. Although to the right and the left of the tomb, there are still structures. The tomb wall is actually built into the structure of the back of this alabaster factory, which is usually not in use. The people who own it have, in some years, come back to use it, but for the most part, it's not in use. So the tomb's original owners, Panehsy and Tarenu, were people who lived during the reign of Ramses II, so about 1250 BC, and they were both chanters in the cult of Amun. And while this is a really common title for women, the Chantress of Amun title, it's really pretty uncommon for men, and that was what sparked my interest to work in this tomb in the first place, because men with very unusual titles, I thought maybe something in the tomb would give me an idea about his life, why it was appealing to him to have this unusual title. And other than extreme speculation, I can't really say that I found the answer to that question, but the fact that he and his wife both served the cult of Amun as chanters, you can imagine a sort of a little romantic fantasy of the workplace romance, that they developed an affection for each other through their devotion to the cult of Amun. I should also mention that about 150 people also use this tomb as their burial place in the Third Intermediate period, all the way to the Greco-Roman period. And their remains, their human remains, as well as the shabtis and the broken coffin pieces, etc., were found in the burial corridor. But they're not really the subject of today's lecture, but you can follow along with the project through our Instagram site and through other lectures to find out more about those people as well. So when I say this is the tomb of Panehsy and Tarenu, that just means that they were the first. So Panehsy was unusual in a variety of ways, and one of the things that I found most endearing is that he loved his job so much that he depicted himself on his tomb wall doing his job in a couple of different ways. And so here at the very head of this procession of a giant golden vase of Amun coming out of probably Karnak Temple, you have him and his brother, who's also a chanter, clapping. Their gesture is their hands together in front of them. They're at the head of the procession, proclaiming that the god is coming. So people can come out to see the image, the effigy base, and the other priests make offerings of incense to sort of purify the way and uh, carry other sacred vessels behind. So the role of the chanter and of the chantress is a really important one because it announced the arrival of the god. So as a part of community life, the chanter and the people at the head of the procession would have been the ones that made that first contact, that the people were uh, alerted to the processions coming so that they could come out and meet the god. And it meant that these chanters were also allowed to be in the presence of these sacred images and, in fact, the god who inhabited the images. His second title was a priest of Amenhotep of the forecourt. And this is a really significant part of the tomb decoration. It's clear that Panehsy was a very devoted priest. He depicted Amenhotep I and Ahmose-Nefertari several times in the tomb. And in fact, the tomb is very, very close to where the temple of Amenhotep is. And so you can imagine that the choice of location for the tomb, as well as the choice of decoration, was related to his devotion and his vocation as a priest in the cult of Amenhotep of the forecourt. Now, Amenhotep of the forecourt is regarded as an oracle. And you could see in the figure seated on the palanquin, the carrying chair, this little statue would have been the focal point for worship. This statue would have been the image that the villagers addressed with questions about the future or questions about their well-being. And Panehsy was a priest who would have been responsible for carrying this image of the god, responsible for interpreting the messages the gods are sending back as answers. And so, in this way, he also is in a position of community trust, that he is responsible for that relationship, for mediating that relationship between the people and the gods. And so, when we think about his tomb and all of the different kinds of decoration in it, what is really clear is that his relationship to Amenhotep I and Ahmose-Nefertari, the king's mother, who was also deified, was a really, really important part of his life. And you can see this image on the right of Amenhotep and Ahmose-Nefertari as one of the first images that you encounter in the tomb. These two images on the right-hand side at eye level would have been the first thing that you see as you come into the tomb. And all of the images related to Amenhotep and Ahmose-Nefertari are on that axis, that median axis. So the most important sort of visual part of the tomb, because it's the part that you're directed to as you enter and as you look down the corridor. So you can see on this plan of the tomb, the courtyard area a few steps down, the first room, which has scenes that I've just shown you of the oracle statue. Across from it are scenes of a temple, which we'll talk about in a minute. And then on the very back wall, mirror images of Amenhotep and Ahmose-Nefertari. So you can see how they are just straight down the axis of the tomb. So this image of a temple, just right on the other side of the wall, is of Panehsy making offerings in a temple or in front of a temple. The temple is not really named. Per Amun-Ra could be any temple. The funerary temples were often called temples of Amun-Ra. And so from that idea, I started to think about which temple is this? And the other wall with the procession might represent Karnak, uh, the big effigy vase of Amun coming from it, and the other members of the procession, one of whom is named as a steward for Ramses II, high-ranking official, leads me to believe that that image is probably Karnak. But this one is different. It is slightly different in appearance, but the main thing that's different is the activity that's happening surrounding it. So the other one has the procession. This one has the lone priest Panehsy making an offering of 4 offering tables full of bread and ducks with a bouquet of flowers beneath it, and offering a little libation of some kind of liquid, water or wine, for the god. So in this image, very different from the other one, we have an activity that is focused on Amenhotep of the forecourt. The inscription above singles out Panehsy's job here simply as a priest of Amenhotep of the forecourt. No mention of being a chanter. And in the other image, the other representation, he is singled out as a chanter. No mention of Amenhotep. So he's clearly delineated between 2 jobs, 2 places of work, and 2 types of priestly activity. And so I think on those bases, we have a good starting point to say this might be the funerary temple of Amenhotep I. So if we look down to that back wall, you see the rear wall has some very damaged images, but you can make out that they are Amenhotep I and Ahmoza Nefertari. The line drawing in the middle there is our some of our epigraphic work from our very earliest seasons to try and get as much detail out of those badly burned images from the wall. Now, this wall presents a significant conservation challenge because not only does the tomb have a great deal of burning, a lot of soot deposited on the walls, but this wall in particular was probably cleaned, maybe in the 1960s when conservation was done in the tomb. We don't have any real details about the conservation that was done. There are no records in the Taftish office, the inspectorate. So we don't know what chemicals they applied. We don't know who did it. We don't know when. But it has been treated differently than the other walls, which were, for the most part, left untouched. So when I talk about the conservation, that is one thing to keep in mind, that in addition to the damage from looting and burning, some of the conservation methods of the past may also have inflicted some damage by removing original layers of paint in the attempt to clean off the burnt parts. So thinking about that importance of Amenhotep I, I just wanted to give you this sort of big overview of the landscape, because these tombs fit into a bigger sacred landscape. You know, at the beginning of this talk, I mentioned that it is right in the midst, this whole necropolis is right in the midst of the mortuary temples, the funerary temples of the kings, as well as the tombs of other people. And so one of the unknown or lesser known uh, funerary temples is that of Amenhotep I, because today you can't see it above the ground. It doesn't exist above the ground. It was excavated in the late 1800s by Spiegelberg, and even for him in the late 1800s, there were only really a few blocks above ground, and then the foundations that they excavated. And the location of that temple is really right across the street from this tomb. And so if you were standing in front of Panehsy's tomb, where the arrow is pointing, you could probably see the temple. I mean, it's on the same level, the same elevation, and literally a 2-minute walk, just right across the road. And so the tomb's location in relationship to this temple, the depiction of the temple on it, the importance of Amenhotep and Ahmose and Nefertari in the tomb has a really strong connection to the importance of the whole landscape, the whole cemetery, and not just the tomb as a self-contained element, right? They're taking into consideration this whole sacred landscape and choosing places that might mean something to them. So Panehsy, as a person devoted to the temple cult of Amenhotep, maybe a cult that was carried out in that temple, which is called Meniset in ancient Egyptian. Uh, it really shows that personal connection to why he chose where he buried himself. One of the other aspects that we can explore about the location of the tomb is the location of the Amenhotep I tomb. Um, it is still unknown, but there are very good theories out there. And the first of them, A and B, this little cache that's up in the hill above the whole el-Naga landscape. Howard Carter excavated there and found a lot of material related to Ahmose and Nefertari and Amenhotep I. It's just a shaft, and so not befitting of a royal tomb, perhaps, but maybe a place where they were moved to afterwards or originally prepared for her, but then uh, they used someplace else. It's unclear. Another suggestion is KV39, which also has an early tomb in the Valley of the Kings would work because Amenhotep I is one of the first kings of the 18th dynasty. He's one of the founding pharaohs of the 18th dynasty. And so him not having a named tomb in the Valley of the Kings leads people to speculate that some of these early ones that don't have a name, like KV39, could have been his. And then what I think is probably the more realistic option, which is K9311, which was excavated by the German Institute and Daniel Pultz, very, very close to Theban tomb 16. So if you see on this map, the star is where the tomb is, the purple rectangle is where the temple is, and then the little dot just above the star is the tomb. Now, this is a very large tomb that was reused in late Ramesside times. It has a massive sort of pylon front to it and a huge amount of votive materials dedicated to Amenhotep and Ahmose and Nefertari in the region. el-Naga is significant in this sacred landscape as a place for the 17th dynasty elite. So the parents, the grandparents, the ancestors of Amenhotep I would have used this area of el-Naga. Many finds attest to that. It's not a speculation. And so Amenhotep as that bridge, or what we now see as a bridge from the 17th dynasty to the 18th dynasty, he would have seen as the appropriate place to be buried amongst his ancestors, overlooking his ancestors' tombs, and related to a landscape that was directly across from Karnak Temple, directly in line with Karnak Temple. So for many reasons, I think this is the best choice. There are other objects associated with this tomb that we have found outside of Egypt. Recently, I identified the statue in Turin, 3053, as belonging to Panehsy and Tarenu. The inscription on the back includes the usual funerary offerings, funerary invocations, but right at the top are the cartouches of Ahmose and Nefertari and Jeser Kara or Amenhotep I. The statue entered into the collection in 1824, excuse me, as part of a large lot that was donated by the King of Sardinia to the museum. So this statue, excuse me, represents a really good point to think about in the history of the looting of the tomb. Excuse me, one second. If this were in person, this would be where I would be inserting jokes about illness, but oh, goodness. I believe being able to locate things outside the museum or outside Egypt in museums helps us think about how this tomb was looted. And the tomb was looted in multiple phases. 1824, as the time that this entered into the museum, lets us know that collecting in the early 1800s, somebody had entered this tomb and taken it out of the statue niche where it was originally placed. Other objects, like a couple of shabtis, are in the Petrie Museum in London, and the records show that Petrie bought them in Luxor at the end of the 1800s. So either those things were still floating around since the early 1800s, or successive phases of looting continued through the 1800s. Nevertheless, we have these small pieces of information that help us reconstruct the whole life cycle of the tomb after the Pharaonic period. So just my little Photoshop to replace the statue where it goes. On the left would be the images of, or on the left and right are images of Panehsy making offerings to Ahmose-Nefertari and Amenhotep I. And the statue is exactly the right size. It contains exactly their titles. It mentions Mediset, the temple that's probably right across the street. So all of these clues led me to think that this statue came from this exact place. And you can see here all of the smoke damage and the burning on the walls, and the significant factor that we have to deal with in our conservation. Just one second, I'm going to mute myself to have a real cough. Sorry about that. So the decoration of the tomb, like I said, contains all of these images of Amenhotep I, Ahmose-Nefertari, but it contains more than that. We have funny daily life scenes. We have Book of the Gates, the funeral, the gods. We've got Hathor, Mistress of the West, coming out of the mountain 2 times in 2 places, and Nut as a tree goddess offering water to the deceased 2 times, also very unusual. These scenes, all of these scenes, are things that would have been really appealing to all those people who use the tomb as their secondary burial place. So all of those Third Intermediate period, Greco-Roman period people would have seen this tomb as already containing those funerary motifs that they were putting on their coffins, for example. So we know that the Egyptians loved to double down on the magic. And so using this tomb, reusing this tomb, would have been a choice made because it is already sanctified. It's already sacred with these scenes. It's already a place in a sacred landscape. And so when we think about the secondary burials, we shouldn't think of them as intrusive. We should think about them as honoring a tradition of using this sacred landscape. So here are some of the humorous elements. We've got a donkey up here who's got his mouth open, braying because he's overloaded and about to get hit with a stick. And then on the bottom there, cows who are lazy. One of them's already sat down on the job. He should be pulling that plow. And the poor cow herd who's trying to wrestle him to get him to stand up and prevent the other one probably from lying down. So these little daily life scenes add a sort of personal touch to it. They're part of a wider tableau of Panehsy sort of overseeing agricultural activities. We have the gods of the Aeneid. We've got the funeral procession here with the mummy on a canopic or on the funerary bier, and then the canopic chest with Anubis on the top of it being carried by priests as part of the procession. So we have a mix of those 18th dynasty elements as well as the more religious aspects of Ramesside decoration. This Hathor in the first room is damaged, unfortunately. It was probably uh, damaged either in an early phase of looting or through natural processes. We don't know. But the pieces that you see sort of plunked on there with Photoshop, those were found in the excavations of the corridor leading to the burial chamber. And so we can replace those in our conservation efforts. One of the things that we're doing is taking out that 1960s conservation Luna. It's a mud mixed with straw that looks very much like the original mud matrix that the plaster is adhered to. So on the one hand, it looks very authentic, but on the other hand, it's full of straw and other organic material like poop. And so it attracts insects, so we don't want that. So some of this mud being removed will allow us to replace those pictures, those pieces of the plaster where we know that they go. We can match them up and replace them. On the left of the scene, you can see part of the area that has been looted, and the big gashes across are from the knife or the saw or whatever they used to cut the plaster off the wall. The plaster is on a mud layer that's about a few centimeters thick. And so what they were trying to do is take the whole slab off. In many cases, that crumbled. So I don't know what exactly they were left with in the process, because from some of these looted scenes, we do have some of the fragments that got left behind. And we will hopefully be able to replace them all in our conservation efforts. This scene is, you might not be able to guess, but it was a Hathor coming out of the mountain. On the right hand, there's a papyrus clump and the little red section of desert, the little dotted part that indicates the mountain. And just to the left of the big blank space, you can just make out the foot of a person facing towards the mountain, the worshiper addressing Hathor coming out of the mountain. And that question mark in the middle is where the rest of that Hathor scene would have been. And because of work we did last year, we now know what happened in this part of the tomb. This part of the tomb is where we're going to find a whole secret room, actually. We started to take off this plaster and where the question mark is that modern plaster to replace it. And behind it, we found a modern wall. And so we got permission to take down the modern wall. And lo and behold, there's another room back there. So I'll show you pictures of that again in a minute. So this Hathor scene, they plowed right through it to make this second room, which tells us that it was not part of the original design of the tomb. And that is very much in keeping with the rest of the history of the tomb as a place that is reused over and over and over. So our epigraphic drawing, you can see the papyrus clump and the little bit of desert vegetation. And from the photo, you can see just how blackened the wall surfaces are from soot. If they were looting in the 1800s, that soot is probably from torches being carried. We have tree goddess scenes. This one is in the first room, offering cool water to the deceased and his ba. And you can see on the right-hand side some of the looting, the scene of the deceased couple at a banquet has been stolen. You can see those gashes in the mud backing. We have a second tree goddess scene in the second room, and the blackening or the darkness from the soot extends down to about the level of their heads. So probably as this looting is happening, either it is still partially filled with debris, or at various times it was filled with debris, and that limited how much the soot could damage the rest of the wall surface. Porter and Moss, when they talk about this tomb, they indicate that the whole second room is completely filled with debris. And that's corroborated also by the French mission, who did an epigraphic study of the first room only, because the second was inaccessible. So we know that when I got to it, it was already cleared. There was already cement floor. Probably in the 60s, somebody came and cleared that debris out, put down the cement floor, did the conservation to add those that new plaster, and to try and clean that back wall. So we have a little bit of the history of the modern use of the tomb. In this scene, I want to draw your attention to one fun little thing. The tree goddess, she's in the sycamore fig tree. There's this little white thing at the bottom, sort of an enclosure around the root of the tree. And sycamore trees need a lot of water. So that would have been a sort of device to keep the water close to the root ball. Sycamore figs are trees that do best while they are heavily tended by human beings. They need a lot of attention from water, and to keep animals from nibbling on their lower branches and so on. And so this container for the tree gives us a little insight into agricultural practices, as well as the tree goddess and her role in funerary offerings. So now I want to focus more specifically on the looting. From the original burial of Panehsy Tarenu, we have almost nothing remains, at least from what we have excavated so far. So in the secondary burials, all through the corridor leading to the original burial shaft, which is not really a shaft, it's only a meter depression, basically. Only a New Kingdom amphora and a mud stopper marked Irip, which seems to be the same size as that amphora, are probably from the original burial. Everything else really dates to much later. So what happened to their original sarcophagi and coffins, we have no idea. Like I said, the Pear statue has been in Turin since 1824, and the two Shabtis that are in the Petrie Museum purchased in the late 1800s. But as we sifted through the secondary burials, which were thoroughly looted, this is completely mixed fill. It's not stratified in any way except horizontally based on the looting process. We found in the fill numerous items from the 20th century, peanut shells, flip-flops that are made of plastic, matches, cement bags. So we know that people entered the tomb over and over, and for different purposes. Those cement bags might have been part of making the cement floor in the 60s. And then those got mixed into the fill. So even after the conservation, people went in there. And we also know that the scenes that were cut out of the wall were cut out after the conservation was done. Some of those hack marks go into the conserved areas. And they stole scenes from the areas that were, by all accounts, completely blocked by debris. So, based on those kinds of ideas, as well as published photos showing pieces of the tomb that are now destroyed intact from the 60s, and then showing those same things already destroyed in the 80s, gives us a window, the 1960s to 1970s. So nothing, more definitive than that, but given the amount of information we have to work on, that's a pretty good window. So what is missing from the excavation is also very telling about art market looting. There's no papyri or no complete coffins. There's nothing really complete at all other than some shabtis or no wooden stela. Most of these secondary burials were third intermediate period. That's what the third intermediate period stela are usually associated with. All of these things are popular with collectors, things that you see in museums, and so the fact that they're not in the tomb and we have this looted landscape, all of it speaks to sort of art market directed looting, not occupation of the locals. There's no evidence for the tomb having been transformed into a living space with the little cubby holes on the wall or electricity or anything like that. This is destruction that's based on art market driven looting. So our next steps in this story are to clean the walls, consolidate all of those fragile plaster places, remove that inappropriate conservation plaster and try and address previous conservation treatments, and replace plaster fragments of the wall scenes where it is possible. So here's one of those scenes that was intact in the 60s. This is published in an art history book, published in like 1965. And then what it looks like today. And you can see the big gashes right through it. The pattern of what they stole also speaks to art market looting. They avoided things that would be easily identifiable. No names. They didn't take the really famous scene of Amenhotep or Ahmose-Nefertari. They took just the headshots, the places where Panehsy and Tarenu and their beautiful Ramesside wigs and their lovely profiles would have been really easy things to sell. This is another area, Chicago House archival image on the top there. So thanks to them for access to their archive. Shows us what this scene looked like as of, I think, the late 50s when this was taken. And again, you could see they focused on the figures, but not trying to avoid most of the inscription. The inscription on the edges would have been probably the part that crumbled off. They're focused on the heads of the people, and they didn't care so much about what was happening with their feet, for example. The banquet scene, we found a number of fragments in the excavation material mixed in with all of that looted debris. So how it ended up there, I don't know, but I suspect that at some point someone tried to take bigger sections of the scene and these little pieces crumbled and fell away. So we are going to be able to replace them once we take out that old conservation material and restore as much as we can to what it looked like before. So to that end, we have a conservator named Eriko Peitner, who's an excellent team member doing all of this work and directing the rest of the team in helping him. He did infrared sort of photography to determine how much paint is left underneath the blackened layer, so that as he cleans, he knows exactly what he is going to encounter, and formulating different treatments for different pigments, because different pigments have different minerals in them and respond differently to the conservation materials he's using to clean. So he did several test spots to figure out what would be the best way to proceed. And here you see him applying a little conservation material to the face of this priest. So the scene on the right, you can see part of it is blackened, part has been cleaned off, and that infrared image is what the total image looks like. Now, the sort of crowning glory of the tomb is going to be the ceiling. Now, it doesn't look like much maybe in this picture. You can see some black blobs there on the ceiling. Those blobs are birds and plants. This part of the tomb, as you enter, it opens up, it gets taller. So you're crouched down a little bit as you go through the doorway between the first and the second room, and then it opens up a couple meters high. And the impression is that birds are taking flight, like you've scared them as you approach. Now, you can't see very clearly as you stand in the tomb and manipulate the light. You can see the thicker areas of paint where the birds are. You can see the different shadows that fall on the brushstrokes, and you can pick out the birds really clearly. But now that we have started to clean, we have found amazing, amazing images underneath that soot, just with simple manual cleaning. A lot of Q-tips, a lot of cotton swabs went into this little section of birds. And so our initial conservation season, I would say, is a massive success. The amount of clarity that has emerged from underneath that amount of soot is just amazing. And now imagine all of that. This is what is on the rest of that ceiling. So as you walk in, it's a little bit dark. You've got in the front room images of tent on the ceiling, enclosed space, and then it opens up and these birds are being flushed out by your arrival. And little clumps of grape clusters and other plants around it give you this natural environment. So you remember this wall? That's where the plaster came off. Well, we took the plaster off enough to remove part of the modern cinder blocks, and lo and behold, behind it, uh, more tomb, more tomb. So we don't have a lot of details yet because we found it, of course, in the last week of work, and it took up a few days of our last week of work. But looking inside it, we could see that there are human remains on the surface, as well as some more plaster pieces from the wall, and little pieces of bone and ceramic. So I expect that there's more secondary burial material, as well as more plaster pieces from the wall. So next year, when you tune back into our progress reports, hopefully we will have some more to tell you, because starting January 1st, inshallah, we will be continuing our work here, and we have permission from the ministry to go ahead and start investigating this little room to see what is there. Is it a shaft? Is it just a little cubby hole? We don't know. So you'll have to tune back in, hopefully in the spring, to find out what we were able to find and to see more of those lovely birds uncovered through our conservation. So with that, I want to say thank you to all my team members, past and present, Ministry of Tourism and Antiquities, for permission to work and to engage with Egyptian heritage, the Luxor Inspectorate, which is full of lovely people, and the people of Luxor, our workmen, who make every season a joy, and especially to the Sphinx Foundation, our new funding partner, who has made this conservation really possible. And with that, I will end the presentation and take your questions if you have any. All right, so any questions in the chat? Oh, hello, everybody in the chat. I'm just seeing all your messages now. Hello to all my friends everywhere, Canada, Greece, England. I see a lot of names that I know. Thanks for coming. No questions? Dan, who is the founder of the Sphinx Foundation, is also my epigrapher. So, oh, from Paris. Oh, Sophie. Hi. Um, so if you have questions about the epigraphy, you could also ask Dan.
Oh
He's
no.
doing wonderful things. Thanks for the well wishes. Sorry about the coughing and the croakiness. The first cold of the season. Thankfully, get it over with before I got to Egypt.
You sure we don't have any questions whatsoever? We have some. There was a nice comment about the robbing the terrible people that robbed from the scenes. I thought that was really, really sweet. Um,
Yeah. Yes.
and then
Yes. Yes. I mean, such complete disregard for the scene around it. Like they were gonna get what they were gonna get and they didn't care what they left behind. And I know that the tomb got doors on it in the 80s, 1980s. And so that also provides a nice sort of ending point at which access was free to the tomb. So I see the question, how long do I think the conservation efforts will continue? Will be will the tomb be open for the public? I don't know how long conservation will take, probably a few years because there's a massive amount of cleaning that needs to be done. And, um, it's slow going, not only because it's, time consuming work, but, we can only go for 6 to 8 weeks out of a year. Usually that's what we have funding for. So, uh, if we got a huge amount of funding, we would stay for longer and do more. But at this rate, at least 3 years, I expect. Will the tomb be open to the public? That is not a decision I make, but I have mixed feelings about it because I desperately want to protect it from any other like nosy fingers touching it and stuff like that. But also, I would really love for it to be open because this tomb is a really great opportunity in terms of accessibility. It's at ground level. There's only a couple of steps down into it. So people who have mobility issues would find this a really easy tomb to visit. And it's beautifully decorated. It has so many interesting details that I think people would love to see. It's very similar in style to Roy and Shuroy that are already open. So, it fits into the program of things that they like to open, but yeah, it's not really up to me. Okay, next question. Quite near the site, the mortuary temple of Nebuchadnezzar. I think so. That's closer to Darul Bahri, I think. But yes, it's in the neighborhood for sure. Like our tomb is right on the road that goes to Darul Bahri, that curve around. So not more than a few minutes away. Um, let's see. It'd be great to have another tomb to see there. Yes, the ministry is always looking for new things to present to the public because, once you've been to Egypt and you've seen things, you think, oh, I've seen it. I don't need to go again. Then they open new stuff. You're like, I got to go again. I got to see it, you know? So from their perspective, it's good business because they keep offering more new experience and then they can close some of the tombs that have been open for a while, give them a break, let that um, air sort of cool down, let the mold air out without all of us in there breathing on it. So I think from a conservation and heritage perspective, this would be a good this would be a good candidate, and I would be happy as long as we get protections in place to make sure that it is also safe. Other questions? This is a point at when I'm teaching class, my freshmen are looking at me kind of stunned, like either they have zero questions because I explained everything perfectly, or they have too many questions and they don't know which one is the right one. So if you're in the second group, just ask away.
I'm incredibly excited about the pear statue, the one for the niche.
I am too.
It's so
I I am so grateful to the people at the Turin Museum. When I contacted them about this possibility, they immediately sent me their accession information, and they have now given me permission to go visit it. So next month, I am going to visit Panehsy and Tarenu in Turin. But they most graciously did 3D scanning of it, numerous pictures from all sides. So me going to visit it is just to really look at the little details. There's a section where Panehsy lists his mother's name and it's eroded a little bit. So I want to see if I can get in there with a little flashlight and see if there's more details I can get out of that. And it's interesting that he only lists his mother's name. Love that for him. But but yeah, I'm very excited. I'm going to spend a little bit of time in Turin. My first visit to Turin, so uh, looking forward to seeing the museum in general. And our new team member, Diletta Pulico, is coming to study the textiles in TT16, and she's associated with Turin Museum. So gonna go see team members, see Panehsy, see the city, see the Christmas markets. Very excited. Okay, another question. Image of the sacred vase procession. So showing Panehsy and his brother had the caption TT18. Oh, 183. Nebsu Menu, the guy in the nice wig holding the big incense brazier, he is buried in TT 183. And he is named there. Sorry, I forgot to mention that. He is named there. And so, as a steward of Ramses II, a high ranking local person, was also buried in the necropolis. His relationship to Panehsy we don't know, but perhaps he was a patron, perhaps he was a relative. There's uh, no other signifier like brother or father or anything. So family friend, relative, unclear, but definitely seems to be the man buried in 183. I think one of the interesting things about the Theban tombs is being able to reconstruct relationships amongst people and to understand just how connected they were to not only other people but the landscape that they're in. That this is something that the people in the village would have visited for festivals and for offerings to their dead relatives, and uh, being able to see other individuals named in other tombs would have been really exciting, I think, for the people of the community to be like, oh, Nebueno Nep's here too. Oh, Nep's Menu. You know, would have been a very close connection.
if there's not any more last questions, I'll go ahead and pull it to a close. I think uh, you deserve a break. You've certainly earned it. I feel so bad having you present while you're under the weather. So thank you so much for still presenting. Um,
Well, I hope it wasn't too painful to listen to. I apologize, but uh, at least it was Zoom. I wasn't canceling a personal appearance.
so again, thank you so very much. If you'd like
Yes.
to learn more about Dr. Onstine and the U of M team's work rather in TT16, please visit our website and download a free copy of the Sphinx Central newsletter for more information. Again, thank you so much for attending this event, and please like and follow us for future events and encourage friends and family to donate. I wish you all a wonderful weekend, and if you're here in the United States, a happy Thanksgiving. Hope to see you next time. Thank you very much.
everyone.